Hello Guyana, hello Guyana, hello Guyana. It's Sunday, 31st August 2025. Tomorrow is election day. Tomorrow is E-Day, and we're going to go out there. We're going to exercise our franchise. We're going to exercise the right to elect a government of our choice, a government that will serve the people of this country, a government that will put people first, a government that will take the development of this country to heights never before seen. Before we get into today's conversation, which focuses on election day activity and GECOM's preparedness for elections 2025, I want to bring to your attention, if you have not yet been able to, if you've not yet been exposed to it, a very ugly development in Region 9. You see, there was a time in this country when things happened in the remote interior locations that no one of consequence in the city became aware of it. And if perchance people became aware of it, it would be sort of what we call word of mouth. But here is video evidence of the callous, disrespectful, horrible treatment of indigenous peoples in this country. The video you're going to see is accompanied by a recorded telephone conversation. One of the voices in this recorded telephone conversation is purportedly the voice of someone named Amir Ahmad. And in subsequent social media posts, a gentleman by the name of Amir Ahmad accepted that that was his voice in the conversation and that he was the man behind this thing. My brothers and sisters of Guyana, this is where political connection and political ties, fueled by the power of money, brings home harm, brings home danger, brings people to a state of subhuman treatment and condition, strips people of their dignity, removes from people the sense of pride. This is dehumanizing treatment of Guyana's indigenous peoples. And before we go to the video, let me tell you, if you're unfamiliar with the Rupununi savannas, but you have an idea of what a savanna is, you will appreciate that here is a group of indigenous peoples, including women and children, to wit a baby, are put off a bus on a roadway in the scorching sun with no tree under which they can seek shelter from the sweltering heat, with no source of water that they can turn to quench their thirst or cool the head of a sick child, and no food and no hope of transportation to pick them up from where they were left. To get them to where they intended to go or back to their homes. This is a naked demonstration of political and monetary power over innocent citizens of this country. And my indigenous brothers and sisters will know what they must do when tomorrow comes. Let's have a look and a listen.
Carry on. stranded. And no, I'm telling y'all, I can give you me honest advice, and you can take it or not take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What going on there right now? Gotta stop and y'all gotta move away. And that and y'all got. I know it's the pay y'all, but
Mm-hmm.
you got look at long term. Don't look at short term business.
Uh-huh.
If you understand, because you know that what can come afterwards.
Yeah. Well,
So,
there's no.
mm-hmm.
Now I getting a call. Now I getting from somebody. Uh-huh.
No, correct. I get the call. Because the man know I know Greaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the man tell me straightforward, I don't do back business with Greaves no more, and and if I do that, you understand? And then they can do what they gotta do. Now, let me tell you something. The man ain't gonna know if I go where you there with right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get 5 seats, wherever it is. But let me tell you, if I was you, how much boss y'all got up there right now with them?
5 boss gone out. Mm-hmm.
How much you pay y'all?
They deal with the drivers them there. I gotta get on back to them. Mm-hmm.
Here now, yeah, you need to give instructions. You and Grief, the boss them gotta move off. Just move off your boss and leave them stranded. I know what telling y'all. I can't beg for y'all when the time is too late. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't tell you. I think Greaves don't tell you who call, right?
Yeah.
And for that, them man, again, I can't say too much, but if I was you, move the boss and send me the picture. And so that would to show them loyalty. You understand my point?
Well, yeah. Well, the bosses I can't get on to the bosses. Well, who gone out in the village right now? We gotta wait when they come back in.
Yeah, but when they come back in, the damage is done. You understand? Yeah, I think a Starlink for the boss about it.
No, is now we personal bosses were gone out.
No, but whatever is your personal boss, move off. Save yourself. The other drivers, them you shouldn't really care about that at this point.
Good. Yeah, two of the bosses, we personal boss. I go
and pull them off and send me the picture, and then I can say, hey, you understand my point?
Good.
Well, Chief, I can take it over from you, sir. When we are finished, I can go and take it over.
But listen, you need to send me the picture ASAP. The damage is already done. That's why the man in answering, you say, are you an answer?
So are you an answer me?
Exactly, because the damage is already done. The only way you can salvage this is move away you boss what that got Greaves on it, right? And like I said, Chief, look, the man move away, and the man said they didn't know that they did get payment, and they didn't know was when somebody book it through a third party. That's the most I can do for you. You understand?
I've had enough of listening to this nonsense. What is the price of loyalty, I ask? And we'll continue to run a video in the background so you see the women and children involved as collateral damage, where someone panders to the People's Progressive Party as a loyalist so they can make money, and in the process ends up using a young family business to oppress indigenous peoples. And the people who manage and own this business are from the indigenous community, are of indigenous extraction. But out of fear of victimization, loss of business, and the threat of shutting down their establishment, they cowered like so many other Guyanese who were placed under pressure to grovel at the feet of the people who strut the corridors of power in this country. Unashamed of the things they do to us as citizens, without a care in the world of a reprimand from anyone. People are talking about boycott. I have never been an advocate for boycotting anything. But this runs deeper than Greaves transportation and tours. This runs into the belly of the People's Progressive Party. As for me and my family, Not a cent of our money will be spent on any business in this country with the sheriff brand. Not a cent will my family spend on anything that carries the sheriff brand. This is unforgivable. This is a violation of the human rights and a trampling upon the human dignity of a people. I am ashamed that the Guyana Human Rights Association has said nothing. I am ashamed that the Guyana Private Sector Commission has said nothing about this. I call on all international human rights bodies to condemn this wicked, dastardly deed committed against indigenous peoples in our country. No rebuke from anyone in the executive. Not even a slap on the wrist. Outside of all the inhuman treatment, the indignity, there was a massive breach of a contract to take people from a point to another point. It is a violation of the public transportation legislations of this country. It is a violation of the road service license of a minibus operator. But yet you don't hear Hicken. You don't hear the traffic chief. You don't hear the police. But they sit on their high horses and they say that they care. Look at that lady in that video with a baby in her arms in the broiling sun, the sweltering heat. And you tell me that no wrong has been committed, no law has been violated, no constitutional provision has been violated. Where is the political will of the people of this country? But I call on all indigenous people in this country to recognize that this came from the belly of the People's Progressive Party and was executed by a beneficiary of the largest of the People's Progressive Party. And your condemnation, your silent revolt against this inhuman treatment, your silent and personal condemnation must come tomorrow when you go into that ballot box, that polling place. When you go into that polling station, you must know what you need to do. You must reject this kind of callousness. I don't know where the observers are in all this. And I note that Guyana's permanent representative to the United Nations is in Guyana and is on the political platform speaking for the People's Progressive Party. I know that Guyana's permanent representative to the United Nations is an indigenous woman. I know that Guyana's permanent representative to the United Nations once served as Minister of Amerindian Affairs in this country. Where is your voice, Carlin Rodriguez? Speak for our people now at the UN when you return, or resign in shame. I want to come to our program proper. I want to come to our program proper. I trust that I can adjust. My brothers and sisters, we have in studio today with me Mr. Vincent Alexander, the longest serving commissioner on the Guyana Elections Commission. He is serving there as a nominee of the opposition. And I say that to make the point that he's not an appointee of the opposition, nor is he an appointee of any particular political party, but he was nominated by the opposition, and he, along with Mr. Charles Corbyn and Mr. Desmond Trotman, represent all opposition parties' interests at the level of the commission. Commissioner Alexander, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. This is not an easy time for a commissioner of the Elections Commission. And I thank you very much for taking time out to join me here on Nation Watch so that we can discuss some issues relating to the work of the commission connected to elections 2025.
Thank you very much, Mervyn, for having me. I would not consider this as taking time out of my busy schedule. If this program serves a purpose I think it should serve on this occasion, which should be one of public education, I think it's a part of what should be my schedule. I know we are here to discuss things pertaining to elections, but as a citizen, I cannot not comment on what you were bringing to the public's attention previously. I have this difficulty with my country and my countrymen that we could continue to be civil, be courteous, even be kind in our behavior. The people who have shown absolutely no respect for their fellow citizens, no respect for humanity, no respect for democracy, no respect for governance. But in the face of a disrespect for all of those things, expect to be respected in the arena of those things and by the people who are involved in those things. You know, history has a way of redeeming itself, so to speak. I say that to say this. You made the point that previously there could have been an incident like this and the world would not know. But with technology, we can now see these things almost live. And I say that because a lot of the opinions about our country would have been formed at the time when we didn't have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this has occurred throughout history, remains unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those who are judged for what is known, even by those who would have committed acts like these that remain unknown. And so a moment like this should also be an awakening about what has brought Guyana to where it is and who has brought Guyana to where it is.
Question now to the citizenry, the voting population is, what are you prepared to do tomorrow to extricate Guyana from this bad place in which it now finds itself and place us in a better place in the eyes of citizens of this country, citizens of the world, and in the best interest of our future generations? I think that's where the focus should be. on issues such as these. Mr. Alexander, you have been around elections for as long as the presidential candidate of the APNU has been around politics. You've been around elections for all of 52 years. Whatever happened within those 52 years, you've been, in one way or another, involved in elections. Elections 2025 doesn't give the appearance to the genuinely curious that all is well at the Guyana Elections Commission at a time when all ought reasonably to be well. Why do I say that? There are suggestions in some quarters that a number of persons identified as election day workers, presiding officers, deputy presiding officers, poll clerks, have turned down appointments offered them by the Guyana Elections Commission. And while it is suggested that GECOM has standby persons that they can call on, the whispers are that GECOM is prepared to call on the Guyana Defense Force to field persons from among its ranks to serve in these positions as presiding officers, deputy presiding officers, and polling clerks. And what I find extremely interesting, there's an image that was posted on the Guyana Defense Force Facebook page that shows the Guyana Defense Force Chief of Defense Staff and his team. I'm sure we can get that picture up there. Engaging the private sector commission. And they're discussing, according to the caption of the Guyana Defense Force, private sector commission engages GDF on electoral preparedness. It would appear from this image that preparedness has, well, we know that the Guyana Defense Force does not have the same role as the Guyana Police Force when it comes to maintenance of law and order. So this preparedness seems to be pointing in the direction of preparedness to participate on GECOM's behalf in the elections. What are your views on this delicate matter, sir?
Mervyn, allow me to back up a bit before I get to the delicate matter. Because in fact, I think that all of the things we are going to be dealing with, or I'm going to be referenced, are delicate. My first concern is the relevance of the elections, period. I think in any political system, elections has to be responsive to the geographic and political landscape. And my own view is that in Guyana, we have not yet come to craft an electoral system that is responsive to the landscape. And therefore, though we elect people, because the system is not responsive to our reality, and very often when I speak about that reality, I speak about the plural society. The elections does not serve the purpose that elections should serve. Elections should put in place a government and a form of governance that represents the interests of the nation and therefore ensures that there are things like inclusion in that government, accountability by that government. And I dare say that I think that electoral systems can be crafted in a manner to provide us with those things. You may or may not know that our electoral system in some regards, mirrors systems that are found in Germany, New Zealand, the Scandinavian countries,
As in the hybrid system?
the hybrid system, and even Ireland. I think Ireland is a good example. It mirrors that to some extent, but mirrors it superficially. Does not mirror it in terms of the real substance of those systems. So, for example, on one hand, we have 10 constituencies with 40 seats to balance that back to proportional representation, when in fact those systems are intended to have constituencies that would ensure accountability of the parliamentarians to the constituencies and a top-up number just to make sure there is proportionality. We have turned it upside down.
Upside down, yeah.
Upside down. And so it is not responsive. We say, look, we want accountability. And then we create a system that flies in the face of that very accountability which we want. So the first point I'm making, and really this program doesn't allow me to elaborate on the point, it's the electoral system.
It does. The program does.
No, the time.
We're not sure.
Available.
We have time. Yeah.
Our electoral system is not responsive to the realities of our society and the kind of government and governance we should have in relation to that reality. So the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that we then have, we have elections, and we have an elections commission that has a mandate to conduct free, fair, and transparent elections. And I would think that any organization that has such a mandate has got to put certain things in place to make sure it carries out that mandate. And I want to relate putting certain things in place to a company which seeks to get ISO certification. You know, companies when they're going to be involved in manufacturing, for their products to be deemed acceptable,
International standards.
to have international standards, best practices, they have to get certification. And what is required for them to get that certification? It is required that the people who are involved in these quality control arrangements check their processes. And in checking their processes, determine that the process can produce a product which is acceptable and which can be certified. And so I want to relate that to the Ghana Elections Commission. We need to be certified and certifiable in terms of the product that we are supposed to produce. And that product is free, fair, and transparent elections. You cannot certify an election as free, fair, and transparent if in that process you cannot be unequivocal, unambiguous about the identification of the persons who are participating in that process in terms of their vote for the purpose of producing a government that is a result of free, fair, and transparent elections. So that our process at the very kernel is flawed because we have refused, and GECOM has refused, to put in place what's an international best practice now, that is digital identification of voters and digital registration. And so the issue here is not what's going to happen tomorrow. When you're talking about certification, before you produce the product, you have to verify that the process meets the standards. And if the process does not meet the standards, then that process and that product is not certified. And so I think we have fallen into this situation where though we're going to have elections, because we have not done the things that our process requires to produce the product of the quality required, that our elections cannot be certified as free, fair, and transparent. Though there'll be some kind of certification that will take place, but it is not certification in the context of the parallel I've drawn between elections as a product, GECOM as a manufacturer, and the need for that manufacturer a priori, upfront, to undertake to produce the product in such a manner that it cannot be questioned for its quality a priori.
I hear you, and somewhere inside all of what you said suggests that GECOM being unable to reach that certifiable mark is identifiable by the fact that it has not perhaps been able to attract the people to do the work. And is there any truth in the suggestion that GECOM is prepared to turn to the military?
Right, let me say,
I remember, before you go, I remember in the days of the People's Progressive Party undermining the sugar industry, in particular, among others, that the military was required and some elements of the general public service were required to fill the gap and to some degree or to some measure of success. It appears as though if there's truth in this, somebody is trying to fall back on a 1970s approach to doing matters, addressing matters.
going back to what I started with, in that certification process, one of the elements that the certifying body would look for is the human resource involved in the process and the fitness of the human resource for purpose. Nobody's going to certify a company that's producing drugs if you don't have pharmaceutical drugs. If you don't have the relevant people who are pharmacists, who are chemists, who are druggists involved in the process, you simply wouldn't be certified if you don't have those people involved, because it requires their skill and their knowledge for the product to be properly produced. So if you come to elections, if GECOM is faced with a problem of its manpower and the quality of its manpower, then that too raises questions a priori. It's not about what results these elections will give. It's about the capacity of the organization, in fact, to do
Predetermined
what it's called upon to do. So GECOM has faced with a problem because after 2020, the government decided that they have to fix GECOM and introduced a number of laws, many of which target the people who are GECOM's workers in a manner that says, if in the course of the conduct of your duties, you make an error, you are liable for that error without evidence that you consciously or intentionally did what I'm referring to as an error. So they've introduced this thing called strict liability offenses into the Representation of the People's Act, and a GECOM official who may err, as human beings are likely to do, notwithstanding the fact that he or she may err, will
Liable.
be found guilty if charged for the error and be subject to astronomical fines
And possible imprisonment.
and possible imprisonment. And what that has done, it has impacted the quality and the quantity of servants that GECOM now has at its disposal. Who wants to go and work somewhere where you're working conscientiously, committedly, make a human error, and find yourself facing a charge that may result in a fine of $10 million or in imprisonment over a number of years? And that is what has come to haunt GECOM. They were warned, and this is not GECOM now who was warned. The government was warned. The Honorable Attorney General was warned. The legislators were warned. What they were doing was not going to benefit the conduct of free and fair elections in this country. And it has now come home to haunt us because GECOM has found itself in a situation where the people who were trained, many of them are no longer taking up the jobs for the reasons I've indicated. And therefore, the consequence is that the chances are we're going to have people working in GECOM who probably were not trained. If trained, were found not to be of the standard required of GECOM, running the elections. And that runs completely against my standards requirement.
Straight question. Is GECOM in its current form at the operations and administrative levels in a position to deliver to this nation free, fair, and transparent results tomorrow?
My response to that is that GECOM is in no position to guarantee, mark my word, to guarantee the delivery of free, fair, and transparent elections. I don't know what will happen. I don't know what they'll actually deliver. But you don't take, is it pig in the bag, they say?
Yeah.
You don't go for pig
Don't
in
buy
the
pig
bag.
in bag.
You don't buy pig in bag. And GECOM is like pig in bag. It might turn out that the pig is good, but who should commit themselves to taking that chance with a critical product that if it is not good, is detrimental to the nation at large?
Let's talk to the voters. Our youth population is very high. There are going to be a lot of first-time voters. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking to the dead voters here. We reserve that kind of operation for another political party.
I think, Mervyn, you should say you're not talking to the dead voters or those who purport to be those voters, because they are live people who have purported to be those voters.
Well, there you go. So we're talking to people who are going to the polls tomorrow, who are waking up, not being resurrected, but waking up by God's grace to go to cast their vote tomorrow. Many persons will be voting for the first time. There are now some new rules. There's one particular that speaks to the cell phone and use of the cell phone. Talk to us about this, Mr. Alexander, because many young people and their phones are inseparable. Many persons have phones that are very expensive and may not want to leave it in the custody of anyone for any period of time, particularly if they do not know the person. So, talk us through, particularly for young voters, on the question of the use of cell phone and how we got there.
All right, let me continue to contextualize my response. Based on what I have said, people may come back to me and say, well, should we go to these elections? People have been asking that question. The question is, in some regards, rhetorical. We are going to the elections. And so let's face reality. I have spoken about one reality, but there's another reality, that we are going to the elections. The one that I've spoken about is desirable. The reality of going to elections is a fact. How do you, in those circumstances, try to still strive towards what I have spoken about? In that regard, the people who are going to vote now have to take on the role of quality assurers. They have to take on that role. They're going to elections. You're going to have elections. You're going to have a product. You wanted it to be quality assured in advance. You're going to have it, but you still want it to be quality assured. And so in wanting elections to be quality assured, because you don't want to have a situation where you don't participate, elections are held, and then a government is imposed upon you, there are things you now have to do that should have been guaranteed, but you're going to do them to give yourself, in some regards, the guarantee you were looking for in the first instance. And therefore, the electors, the stakeholders, have got to be involved in processes during the course of this election that does what should have been done, or ensures that that which should have been done for a purpose, that purpose is still achieved. So, for example, I mentioned the question of the identification of electors. And let me say, when I spoke previously, I only gave one example of the faults in the process, but there are many examples. We're speaking now to the example of the identification of the electors. We don't have a guarantee, based on the faults in the process, that you wouldn't have people who are not entitled trying to vote. It now behoves the stakeholders to do things in the process to eliminate that possibility, in fact. And so here is where the role of the election officials on one hand, and the electors, the people who are going to vote on the other hand, the citizens on the other hand, becomes important. So that we have a system in our electoral ecosystem where votes are purchased. And that's one of the things that we should not allow in the process, votes being purchased. But we don't have the mechanisms up front to stop that. Political parties don't have to report on their finances, so they have access to endless money to purchase votes. If in our electoral process we had ensured that political parties have to report on the source of the finance, how they spend their finance, then we would assure ourselves that they can't go and buy votes. So you see I'm developing this process of quality assurance. No, we haven't done that. So that what we have now decided is that, look, since votes could be bought, we have to find a way to stop bought votes from impacting the electoral system. And one of the ways we're doing that is to ban the use of phones in the polling booth. Because a bought vote goes to the polling booth, votes, takes a pic of the ballot and his or her ID card to produce to the purchase of the vote
That's
to
evidence
show
of the
that
purchase.
show the good has been delivered
Mhm.
before he or she is paid. So it's cash on delivery, no advance payment.
No pig in bag.
Cash on delivery. So what is required, what is being done is to ensure, as far as possible, I am not convinced we've gone the full hog, but what is being done is to ensure, as far as possible, picks are not taken. And so the incentive for buying votes no longer pertains. And so what we're going to be doing and what citizens should be aware of is, one, that no one should take a phone into the polling booth, that the presiding officer should announce to every voter that he or she should not take his or her phone into the polling booth. And if for a chance he has his or her phone on him or her, it should be deposited on a space provided in the public sight of all who are there, outside of the polling booth. And so this task is not just a task of the presiding officer, it's a task for the polling agents and all of the officials to observe and ensure that no one takes a phone into the polling booth, and as a consequence, no one can take a pick. Because we want prevention. We don't want cure. We want prevention. Because prevention is cure in this country. It's a petition when a government is already in place.
When another government is going to be in place.
When a government is in place.
Because it takes 6 years.
So what is necessary here, on one hand, is for us to observe all the precautionary measures that should be carried out in the polling booth, as well as we've agreed that the physical arrangements in the polling station should also ensure that whilst you cannot see how the voter casts his or her vote, you can see the voter and what he has in his possession, what he or she has in hers or her possession. So there's a special design of the polling station to ensure that that occurs, and therefore to eliminate the possibility of someone taking a phone in, taking a pic, and being someone.
Let's talk about consequences.
Well, again, we have some issues with consequences, because this that is being done under some law that speaks to secrecy of the vote and speaks to if there's an infringement, is being reported to the police and someone is charged after, and all of that. And for me, there is not a synergy between what you want to stop
and the approach you take.
And the approach that is taken. For me, simply someone should come in, lodge his or her phone with the assistant presiding officer who's giving him or her the ballot, and eliminate the possibility altogether.
Or just leave your phone at home.
Right?
Or in your vehicle.
You can leave your phone at home if you care to, but I'm saying the system should ensure that you don't there's no possibility of getting past, and simply have the phone lodged.
Let's just clarify this. Taking a picture of one's ballot following voting in and prior to the deposit of that ballot into the box constitutes a criminal offense.
This issue has a lot of legal shenanigans, which I really don't want to get into. Where we are focusing on is the offense of purchasing of votes.
Okay.
And what we're saying, that all of taking a phone in provides an opportunity for the offense to be committed. And as a preventative action, you don't want people to take their phones into the booth. we're trying to deal with prevention
I got you.
rather than something called a cure.
Let's talk about prevention as we're on it. There was a standoff recently at the level of the commission. Reports say that the People's Progressive Party asked for some changes to be made in places of poll after the deadline for such changes to be considered had elapsed. There was a meeting, there were some discussions, there was a walkout, there was a loss of quorum. Where are we on this matter of polling places, particularly as it relates to religious buildings and private properties?
Let me say that GECOM has not acquiesced to the requests for those changes. That's the bottom line. GECOM has not acquiesced. Those changes have not and will not be made. But I think it's important to contextualize those requested changes. The requested changes were being articulated against Section 6 of the amended Representation of the People's Act, Section 6. And the first point I want to make is that that amendment was essentially the product of the People's Progressive Party. The amendment was essentially the product of the People's Progressive Party. So, in a sense, they set the scene. I don't think that in Parliament, the opposition voted for the amendment. I don't know that that amendment came out of any consultation. There were consultations, but I don't know that the amendment came out of the consultations. In fact, I attended one consultation. If the consultation was an hour, the AG spoke for 45 minutes. And the people who were being consulted.
This is the same gentleman who made that offensive house slave remark recently?
The same gentleman. So, the amendment is a product. And what the amendment seeks to say is that GECOM should have polling stations in villages and localities that will seek to ensure that they are closest to where the people reside. Notwithstanding the underlying provision which says that they should have, there's nothing illegal once the polling station is in the division. And the requests that they were making, none of the requests when I asked were a situation where polling stations were outside of the division. They were seeking rearrangements within the division and the contention that it brings the station closer to the people. Now, what's of interest to me as well, in the context that I have laid out, is that most of these requests were in the East Coast.
Oh, that's where Anil's name was being called.
And so they were in the area of the person who authored the legislation to make that request possible. They were in the area where we had difficulties with 47 boxes.
Ballot boxes.
They were in the area where there was an accusation of people being given ID cards on election day. So that it is built on a heap of contention.
And a lot of coincidences too.
Quite a lot. Quite a lot.
Which brings me to another question. In the same general area, joint services ballots following the conclusion of voting on that Friday when the discipline services voted. There are reports that the convoy under police escort encountered an accident, and it appeared as though, as a result of the accident, some of the cargo, which includes ballot boxes, may have spilled onto the roadway in the same general area. And there is a point of view out there that suggests that this could very well have been a dry run for a main event. Your thoughts on the coincidences as they continue to pile up?
Well, I wouldn't quite go there in this sense. There's a big difference between those ballot boxes and the ballot boxes we'll be transporting after the end of elections.
Mm.
After the end of elections, we'll be transporting the ballot boxes for which a count has already been done.
Mm.
These boxes
Have not yet been counted.
Not yet counted. And they were ballots still in transition to be deposited into the eventual E-Day ballot box.
But there were mix-ups with envelopes and ballots.
Come, let me proceed. Now, there can be all sorts of scenarios and imaginations of what occurred and even what was to occur. But I would like to give the public the assurance that the arrival of certain people on site in an extremely timely manner did not lend to what might have occurred, and that those ballots were secured, and there's no reason for concern. I would like to say that. However, having said that, to respond to what you said earlier, we did have a situation where there's apparently four misplaced ballots on ballot day. In other words, envelopes ballots which were intended for Region 4, 2 ballots, I think it is, may have found themselves somewhere else. And ballots which were intended for somewhere else may have found themselves in Region 3 too. So it's just 4 ballots we're talking about. And what GECOM has done is to take a decision that will issue an order that will provide for when we do the count. Remember, those ballots are enveloped. When we are de-enveloping those ballots, we will be able to see if there are ballots that are not for a particular area, and we'll be able to divert them to the area. We're talking about 4 ballots. So we've put some mechanism in place to be able to divert those ballots to be counted in the right area. They are in the system. The number of overall ballots, there's no problem with that. It's just that 4 ballots have found themselves in the wrong place, and we will make every effort to get them back into the right place through predetermined mechanisms. So I'm not here just knocking GECOM because I want to knock GECOM. I'm here objectively looking at GECOM and its processes.
We here at Nation Watch, and I believe all of our viewers and listeners understand that Vincent Alexander is a consummate professional who deals with issues.
Not all of his viewers. You have some trollers on these things. The moment they see me, they start to tell the public things that they cannot substantiate. So it's important for us to demonstrate to that public how objective we are, and not to take those trollers on who can only spew but cannot produce anything to support what they're spewing.
Well,
it's poisonous.
Well, before you shoot, you have to load up. So if what comes out is... Anyway, so let's talk a little bit, Mr. Alexander, about the process of voting for the benefit of our legitimate viewers and listeners, particularly the younger ones, the new voters. Help them understand, speak directly to them and help them to understand the process and even perhaps the importance of that vote, its secrecy, and its impact going forward.
The first thing I would say to the voters out there is don't wait until tomorrow morning to see if you're listed. There is an app on GECOM's website.
Mm-hmm.
Go to that app. You can use either your ID number or your name, your address, and your age. And that app will advise you where you are to vote. And this is important. I met a gentleman yesterday who came to me and said that he had gone to check at the place where he normally votes. He didn't see his name on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And he was concerned. I said to him, I have did he have a phone that had data? He said, yes. I said, bring your phone, bring your data, with your data, and let's go through. And we went through, we found his name, and he's going to vote at Polly's nursery school tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But he had gone to check wherever and didn't see his name. So the first thing I want to say to voters, please don't wait until tomorrow to go and check. Once you have a phone and you have data, or you have a computer and it has Wi-Fi access, or your phone is in the Wi-Fi access area, go onto GECOM's website, and there's an app there. Find your polling place. That's the first thing.
Do that now. Do that
now.
immediately. Yeah.
Bear in mind tomorrow when you go to vote that there's something called a polling place that has many polling stations. And so don't go and check one list at one polling station and you don't find your name and say, well, something is wrong. Because there are many polling stations. And the polling stations are there based on something called an alpha split or a geo split. What that means? An alpha split means that two people may be living in the same house, but their surnames are different. One surname will be A, one might be Z. The person with surname Z would vote in a different polling station to the person with surname A.
In the same polling place.
In the same polling place.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily, it could be different polling places as well. But the point I'm making, the actual station we'd have to vote could be different. So bear that in mind. Secondly, the geo split. We may be neighbors, living across the road from each other. Both in the geo split, though we are neighbors, living across the road, the person on the left side of the road may be voting in a different polling station than the person on the right side of the road. So don't let those things create confusion. I've seen people walk into the polling place, they can't find the polling station, or they get mixed up with geo split and alpha split, and they start coursing, and they're going back home. I've seen that.
And I've seen the People's Progressive Party capitalize upon that. And I think voters need to understand how this operates. The PPP generally sets up a table within close proximity to polling places, oftentimes in violation of the distance. And they pretend to be operatives of the Elections Commission. And they call people to that table. And they have the list in front of them. And they will take persons' identification cards. And they will provide information to the persons regarding their polling place. And they take that opportunity to solicit the vote for the People's Progressive Party using the same method that requires the picture to be taken. And I'd like voters to be very wary of that kind of operation. And I trust that the international observers pay keen attention to these people and their operations as well.
Voting requires a lot of consciousness in this country. Let me give you an example of a case I had 2 mornings ago. I got a phone call from overseas. And the person who called me said, look, some people have asked me to inquire of you. Why is it their names are not on the list, though they were told their name on the list? And let me give you this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
They said that sometime people came to their home with a list and told them they're listed. And they presume that those people probably were GECOM people. Now it's election time and they're going to check. They're not seeing their names on this list, which they were told their name is on. And there are two issues there. The chances are that they're not checking in the right place, or the chances are that they were misled to believe because it was in the interest of those who visited them
To ensure that they're not on that list.
not to ensure they're on the list. Right? So it's very, very complex, our electoral politics. Very, very complex. So here is the voter. You're on the list. You turn up with your ID card. You present your ID card to the polling clerk, who then checks the list that he or she has and then announces to the polling station the name, etc., of the person who has presented the ID card and raises the ID card. One of the problems I have with that is that the raising that ID card is insufficient because of the distance.
I have a serious issue with it.
For identification. So we have to do something about that. And I'm going to come to that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's assume that there's a query because our ID cards are dated. Meaning this. We have people who were registered since 2008. 2008 is now 17 years. Some of them were 14 when they were registered in 2008. They're now 31 years and have gone through significant feature changes.
Yeah.
That card is not good for facial identification. This card is simply not good for facial identification. Now we'll go back to process. We had agreed in GECOM years ago that every 7 years we should really change the ID cards. We haven't done it.
Through a process of renewed registration.
Yes.
Yes.
We haven't done it. Even if it's not renewed registration, it's a process of renewed, updated identification. We haven't done that. See what I'm saying about process?
Yes, yes.
So the cards are bad for that purpose. Our people who are working in those stations need to go beyond just knowing that the person who turned up name is listed and to do a thorough interrogation of those cards. And if those cards are not usable for identification purposes, a mechanism is now in place where that person should be subjected to the same kind of interview as someone who did not turn up with an ID card. So that you try to ascertain that the person is indeed that person by virtue of the person's knowledge of questions which originated from the information they provided when they were registered.
Issue the card, yeah.
When they were registered. So the PO should then, if people protest that identification, should then interrogate that person and administer the documentation as if the person is voting with an affidavit rather than an ID card. Now that requires vigilance, consciousness, and commitment, and knowledge to start with.
Yeah, I have seen and had reason to object on a number of occasions in different places in Region 1, in the Demerara River in Region 3, and all over the place. I've had reason to object, particularly in Region 1. And this is so because in Region 1, a lot of us look similar, have similar facial features. And in many cases, the ID cards do not capture in any great detail or any, in any great detail, the image of the person. We had problems with those. And of course, there's the issue of persons presenting ID cards that may not genuinely be theirs. And I've seen polling clerks just raising the card and flashing it around, and I've seen agents of political party just taking off. And I said to, in all of those cases, to our political party's representative, that you need to get that card in your hand.
Well, the argument here in that regard is that they get the folio. So they have a representation of the card in front of them.
Well, I still have a problem with it because I tell you what I observed, particularly in Imbatera and Morowana, I name the places, that when you sought to get GECOM's cooperation, to get your agent to look at that card against the folio and the person in front of you, the clerk would tell you, but the system is that we, and I'm saying absolutely not.
Absolutely.
We're not going to accept that.
Absolutely not.
In one instance, I had a big issue with a policeman who threatened to put me out of a polling station. I said, I dare you. I dare you.
Absolutely not. But the folio has the same problem the ID card may have.
Worse, because the folio
it's the
is
same
printed in
picture.
black and
No, the folios
it's
this
dark.
time will be in color.
It will be colored this time.
The folios will be in color. But the folios do have that problem. Once it's dated, it's dated. Folio or no folio. So we must understand what rights you have, entitlements you have in this process. Now, persons who do not have ID cards can come with their driver's license, they can come with their passports. But they will have to be subjected to that process that I referred to earlier.
Right.
So every effort is being made to entitle people, but equally every effort has to be made to ensure that people do not take advantage of the provisions of the system. So one goes through the identification process. Having gone through the identification process, one then goes to the APO to be issued with a ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Voters should ensure that that ballot is stamped with a 6-digit stamp, which is determined at the commencement of poll, at the top and at the bottom.
Meaning the top ballot paper, the ballot paper.
Let's assume this is the ballot paper. The ballot paper will be folded this way, along the vertical axis. Along the vertical axis.
Mm.
This then becomes the top, and this becomes the bottom. So the stamp should be top, and the stamp should be bottom. Ballot paper should not be folded along the horizontal axis. It should be folded along the vertical axis. The critical thing here is that really the top represents the ballot for general elections, and the bottom represents the ballot for regional elections. So really you're stamping two ballots.
Right.
If you don't have the stamp on two ballots, historically, when they divide the ballots along the horizontal axis for counting, the one without a stamp is not counted.
It's not counted.
What GECOM has now decided is that if at the count, before you separate the ballots, you see that one part of that sheet is stamped, it means there was a human error. The other part should have been stamped. So you don't say it's not stamped and therefore it's not valid. You then stamp it, and then you separate so that the ballots go into the count, both stamped.
Well, we hope that GECOM follows its processes.
Well, what I'm saying is not only GECOM. My quality assurance now
Is the voter.
is the voter.
Yep.
What I said, we as voters also have to ensure we are questioning the certification of the process, but we're in the process.
Yep.
So we are in the process, and we're now going to do things equivalent to what was required for the certification, so that in fact, whilst we didn't have a de jure certification,
You have a de facto
you have a
one.
de facto certification. So I'm saying don't get torn off and say you ain't going to vote because Alexander say that this thing in cautious. The election is being held. A government will be elected. You have a right to participate in that process. In our circumstance, you have to take on the role of the quality assurer by ensuring everything is right in the process. And this instance, we're talking about the insertion of the 6-digit stamp on the ballot paper.
Mhm.
Now, once that is done, you go to cast your vote. You put aside your phone. If you have a phone, and you go to cast your vote in the compartment, and what you're required to do is to vote in what is essentially 2 elections. A regional election, and that ballot is at the bottom.
Mhm.
You put your X in the box against the symbol and name of the party of your preference.
The PAM and the APNU.
And similarly, at the top, you put your X against the symbol and the party
The PAM and the
of your
APNU.
preference. So when you do that, you fold the ballot back in the manner in which it was folded by the APO and return to cast your vote. You've only marked your ballot. You don't cast your
Yeah.
vote yet. When you go to cast your vote, the ballot attendant will put his or her hand over the opening in the ballot box and say to you, before you cast that vote, have your finger inked.
Right.
And that ink should be above the first joint of the index finger of your right hand. When he or she is assured that you have done that, then they remove their hand and you're allowed to cast your ballot. So that's largely the routine of casting your ballot. You should be identified. In order to do so, you should be able to acquire a valid ballot. There are circumstances in which your ballot might be spoilt. If you recognize you've messed that ballot up, you can in fact ask for a new one.
Say that again and slowly, please.
If you have recognized you've messed the ballot up, if for some reason you do something wrong, some people go in there write their name on the ballot and things like that. When you catch yourself and you write something is wrong, you put the X not in the box. You you can ask for a replacement.
A replacement ballot.
That ballot will be counted as spoiled. It will be part of our record, but you get a new one to go and do the right thing. So you need to know that you have that right as well. I'm not encouraging people to go and spoil the ballots.
No, but it's very important because many people do not know this. And having regard to the damage done to the ballot, they may feel that this is the end of it. I spoiled it, and therefore I have no recourse. I just got to drop it in the box like that. There is a recourse. You bring to the attention of the person in charge of the polling exercise that you have damaged the ballot and you'd like to have a replacement. And it is your right to have a replacement. It has to go through the same processes. It has to be stamped at the top, stamped at the bottom with a 6-digit number, so that you can go and exercise your vote. And that which you had returned to the presiding officer will go among spoiled ballots. And that does not take away from your right to exercise your right to vote. So that's extremely important, because that's one of the questions I was going to bring to you, because, like I said, many first-time voters, many first-time voters. And obviously, going to elect a government for the first time, a person can be nervous.
There are all sorts of reasons for nervousness.
Yeah.
And some people literally, they're kind of feeble in some regards, and
Yeah.
they can mess stuff up, and so it's important that we provide for them to declare they've spoiled their vote and to have a replacement.
I like the word declare. Let's talk about counting and declaration before we leave. GECOM has announced that as early as the 3rd of September, they will be in a position, the commission will be in a position to publish results for the elections, regional and general elections conducted on the 1st. Tomorrow is the 1st. It's Monday. It's a national holiday. GECOM is saying they will let us know, they can let us know by as early as Wednesday morning the outcome of the elections.
I want to caution the public. It is good for GECOM to aspire to do that. It's good. The law gives GECOM 12 days for the announcement of the results. And why I'm saying that is because if they don't do it Wednesday, I don't want the place to go up in flames. I want people to understand that legally GECOM has 12 days to announce the results. Yes, GECOM is undertaking to work to do it as quickly as possible. Some of the things they're doing is for the first time. Let's hope we get it right and we can announce by Wednesday. But please be aware that under the law, we have 12 days. We know all over the world it happens in a jiffy. We don't have all the mechanisms for the jiffy because we're not submitting ourselves to all of the electronic applications. Our statements have to be delivered physically for them to be taken into consideration. And who knows what can happen on the New River Triangle to delay the delivery of a statement. That has to be flown out, So it's critical that we understand the way in which our terrain sometimes can delay the process. But the count takes place at the place of poll in the first instance, at the place of poll. At that place of poll, the parties they have the right to an agent.
Counting agent.
What we call counting agent, but the designation this time really around is the alternate polling agent. That's the legal designation. But the person really is there for counting purposes. It could be the original polling agent, or it could be the so-called alternate polling agent.
Mm.
And they're to participate in the count, which should be an open count. I'm not saying transparent, open. Everyone should see everything. And they all should have their tally sheets so that they can all do tallying. They should be checking to see that the tallies correspond across the various sheets of the various persons. And only when there is that correspondence, there's no ambiguity, that they then go to insert that information on the statement of poll. And one would assume that once it is inserted, given the provision for them to cross-check the tallies and all of that, that they will then sign off on the statement of poll, which will have information in addition to votes cast. It will say how many spoiled ballots there were, how many destroyed ballots
How many
there
were issued in the first place?
how many were issued in the first place, so that it gives you a balance. It's an account sheet for the ballots. It's an account sheet for the ballots. So that statement of poll is then immediately posted outside of the polling station. The next time that statement of poll comes into play is when it has been transmitted from the polling station to the returning officer, or in the case of Quarantine, Demerara. Let me put it differently.
No, I want to come there separately. Just deal with the general.
It will be, when it's transmitted to those places, it will be immediately posted on the website, so that the returning officers or the deputy supernumerary returning officers, the first task is to verify the ballot, to verify the SOP, so that all of the people present, the agents will be present there as well, verified, this is what we received, that there are no material errors. So they check to see there are no material errors. If the material errors, is a process to contact the people who sent it to come and to correct the material errors. Hence again, the question of 12 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sending from New River to correct a material error, I received it a day
Or
after.
condition.
Or condition. I received it the day after. I have to get to him to come out. It requires time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why the law is cautious with the 12 days. They then post it to the website. And so the nation at large can see and compile their own result, because they will be seeing every statement of poll on GECOM's website.
Now, let's talk about some changes that were made in the counting and declaration process that and how that may affect um, the entire process. I gather that Region 4 has been subdivided, and I believe Region 6 has similarly been subdivided into different.
Region 6 into 3 sub-districts, Region 4 into 4 sub-districts,
and Region
and
3.
Region 3 into 3 sub-districts.
Right. So that means that the results of the polling done in each of these sub-districts will go to that sub-district office in the first instance, after which it will then go to a central office within the region, or no?
All right. The sub-districts in the first instance will be treated no different to an original district.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So all that happens in the district, all that happens in Region 2 will happen in Sub-District 2 in Region 4. Same processes. The only difference is that in Region 2, when they're done, that result goes to the CEO, the chairman, etc. In Region 4, when the sub-districts are done, the result goes to the RO, who then converts that into one result that is then sent forward.
Okay.
But I'm also advised that the results that the subject district come up with are also sent forward. They're also sent forward. Though they're going to send to the RO, they simultaneously will send to the chairperson and the CEO.
These changes, 10 new sub-districts, how different is the operation going to be from previous elections? Is it adding anything to the efficiency of the outcome
It is
of the
said
process?
to add to the efficiency because of the size of the population of those districts. It is felt that the system would be far more efficient and effective.
Easily manipulated, you mean?
I don't mean that.
No, not you.
Far more efficient. It is felt, it is argued that the system will be far more efficient and effective if you don't have one place trying to deal with the results of such a large area, and you have subdivisions.
There have been
Sub-districts.
There have been some historical problems. Well, yeah, I would call them problems. Deficiencies in the system that somehow facilitated, and I know you're going to tell me that if you're on the list, you're supposed to vote. But there have been instances with people coming from other countries. In the Rupununi, from Brazil. In Region 1, from Venezuela. In Region 6, from Suriname. And the People's Progressive Party, a contestant in these elections, is known to have visited the northern state of Roraima in Brazil and conducted campaign exercises. They're known to have visited places in
Nigeria.
Right, Nigeria and other places in Suriname, and mobilized people. A lot of shrouded secrecy with respect to identification cards, registration process, and all these things are in this equation. Do you see any threats emerging from bordering communities in terms of voter impersonation and
It takes me back to my earlier submission. I mean, as I said, it would take me a day if I were to go elaborate. And that's what I meant. Because there are a number of issues related to the ecosystem of our eco-electoral system that has problems. When you consider the eco-electoral system, you're also talking about the way in which births and deaths are dealt with in our country. For example, we have a situation where GROs, inadequate, inefficient, or whatever term to use, system allows for dead people not to be reported to GECOM. And so we do knowingly have dead people on the list. Knowingly have dead people on the list. I talked about GECOM itself not doing all it should do. We have a situation in GECOM where we are not enforcing the provisions of RUPA, the amended provisions, which says that if we get a report from the Commissioner of Police or a report from the Chief Medical Officer of dead people who are not reported on by the GRO, that we can take those names off. We have not been able to agree to a mechanism for taking those names off, though we do have such reports. So we are knowingly having dead people on the list.
So, and in wrapping up and in summary, there is no guarantee that the Guyana Elections Commission at this time, at 3:05 on Sunday, 31st August 2025, no guarantee that GECOM can assure this nation of free, fair, credible elections tomorrow, September 1, 2025.
GECOM has not given that guarantee because it has not done the things required in a quality assurance process to a priori certify the elections. However, I have sat here and said to the people of Guyana that we're going to have elections. That's the reality. A government will be elected. And therefore, the people should, first of all, not give up on their entitlement to be a part of the process. And secondly, they should do things that fills the void of the non-assurance. And therefore, there should be an act of self-assurance. It will not be perfect. It will not be the same as the assurance I'm talking about, but it can go a very far way to ensure that those gaps which are there are closed in the process and that we get as close as possible to an assured elections.
Vincent Alexander, Commissioner, Guyana Elections Commission. We've discussed today elections 2025, the process tomorrow. We trust that our new voters are now better equipped to conduct the exercise of the franchise tomorrow with full knowledge and appreciation of what is required of them, including self-assurance as you exercise your franchise. I want to take this opportunity from Nation Watch on behalf of the People's National Congress Reform, the producers of this program, to thank all our viewers for tuning in and for staying with us and for staying with Nation Watch over this period of time. We trust that we have been able to bring information to you that will help you to make this very important decision tomorrow if you have not already made it. We have introduced to you our candidates, some of them. We have covered the issues for you. We have presented real cases from real people, and we have brought to you the suffering of our people, the plight of our people, the conditions under which people live, the impacts of the high cost of living on people in this country, the low, meager wages that public servants have got to endure as they try to provide for their families, the fact that in the fastest growing economy in the world, there is a rate of poverty that stands at some 53% of our population, 53% of our population living on $5 US per day or less. We have brought this information to you over time and more. And we trust that we have been able to contribute in a meaningful way to the decision that you will take tomorrow when you enter that polling booth to exercise your franchise. We have brought information to you regarding the APNU and its outlook for Guyana, putting you first, putting your children first, putting oil money into your pockets, putting oil money on your table. From our manifesto, or commitment to the people of this country to lift the income tax threshold to $400,000 per month, to raise the minimum wage to $200,000 per month, to ensure that each of our children out there who is 18 years or older and who is working for less than $400,000 a month to be able to get a free house lot, so that you have collateral, so that you have disposable income, so that you can build a future for yourself and for your family as young people in this country. We have made a case here on Nation Watch for the APNU. We have made a case here on Nation Watch for Aubrey Compton Norton to be elected president, and for the APNU to be elected to form the new government whenever the results of elections 2025 are declared. And I urge you to remember, the symbol that you're voting for is the palm. We will meet again after the results next Sunday to review and to celebrate. Until we meet again, I'm your host, Mervyn Williams, wishing you well and trusting that you do the right thing tomorrow. Till we meet again, God bless.